Hey there, church. So excited to bring you our service recap for this Sunday. I'm Ash Matesius, one of the pastors on staff here. We were finishing up our Bible in the Ballot series, kind of doing a catch-all, if you will. The sermon title was Closing Remarks, talking about the last things we didn't get a chance to cover. The first was the idea of immigration. I know, a very hot topic issue, almost a red button issue. A lot of people try and pry away from it. What I love about God is He doesn't pry away from political issues. He speaks His truth and He sent His word to us in the Bible. You know, God is all about immigration. He called Abraham to immigrate from the land of his family into the new land he was going to. He called Moses to immigrate from Egypt to Israel. God even immigrated Himself from heaven to earth. God's all about immigration. He's all about caring for the immigrants. But God is also about assimilation. That those who immigrate have to abide by the laws of that land. When He established Israel, He wanted the Israelites to treat every immigrant equal, every immigrant like family, not to abuse them or oppress them or manipulate them. But He was so clear to make sure that they would obey all the laws of Israel. We see this played out when an Egyptian man blasphemes God. He wasn't an Israelite, but is he bound to Israel law? So the Israelites took him to Moses, and Moses says, "Let me pray." And God responds with, "He has to obey our law," and they stoned him to death, proving that you have to obey God's law absolutely. But the law of the land has to be obeyed absolutely by God. And that's been kind of the big thing missing today. We see a lot of people trying to integrate here while breaking the law to do so. And the problem with that is that creates a de facto hierarchy where you have the haves and the have-nots, the legals and the illegals. There's a very sad story where a woman was in an abusive relationship, but because she was an illegal, whenever she'd want to leave, the man would say, "If you leave, I'll tell ICE and deport you. You never see your family or your friends again." And so she stayed with this abusive man. It's so sad. Her values, her rights, her identity as a human was subverted because of this looming fear of being an illegal. And that's not what God calls us for. God calls us for freedom. God calls us for love. God calls us for life. We have to kind of ask ourselves, we might be against the idea of illegal immigration or whatever your stance is. People are here now. How are we going to love them? How are we going to care for them? How are we going to show them the love of God? How are we going to understand that we're supposed to vote based on the Bible, but live based on the love of God? That's what He says, and it's so beautiful. There's no God like our God. We also talked about the idea of communism and how communism is ungodly because it seeks to replace God with the state or the government. There are so many stories where Christians get thrown in jail because they worship God and not the government. When my Opa, who was growing up, was in communist Germany, he was in school. And there was a day it was very cold in school, and the teacher said, "If you're a Christian, raise your hand." And so about 4 of his classmates raised their hand, and the teacher said, "The rest of you who didn't raise your hand, go to the cafeteria. The state has provided hot pea soup for you and milk and bread. You get to enjoy the food brought to you by the state." And the teacher said, "Those of you who raised your hands, you have to stay here. God has to supply for you." It was all propaganda. It was a horrible, evil tactic that they would abuse these children to get them to see the state as God. My Opa eventually was a soldier on the Berlin Wall, and he decided death was a better alternative than communism, and so he ran over the minefield. Either he died and we went to heaven and avoided communism, or he escaped, went to the West and evaded communism. Communism is not a thing that we want as a church because it goes against the idea of God. It takes from those who have and gives to those who don't. The parable of the talents. Jesus gave those who did well with their money even more, and the one man who squandered his money, it was taken away from him and given to those who did well. The idea of Jesus does not align with the values of communism. The sad part and final part about communism is that you vote your way in, but you have to shoot your way out or fight your way out. The Second Amendment is vital to preventing a government from overreaching upon its citizens. The Second Amendment is less about home defense, although that's a good thing, and more about telling the government it cannot tell me what to do. And friends, people would tell you the right of women's freedom and equality is on the ballot. 100% it is. I am still yet to see a better advocate for women's equality than a woman who owns a gun. Where biology comes short, a woman who owns a gun does not. When women carry in public places, the amount of rapes, hostile incidents, and attacks drops significantly. And the final point was to fight the good fight of faith. Friends, I know it must be tired. I know it must be hard. I kind of get fed up sometimes seeing all the ads about politics myself. But I remind myself of what Paul said to Timothy in 1 Timothy 6:12. It says, "Timothy, even though I've been beaten, even though I've been shipwrecked, even though I've been attacked and stoned and locked in jail, I still have to fight the fight of faith." Friends, we have a good thing here on earth. Fight for what's good. King David didn't defeat Goliath because he hated Goliath. He defeated Goliath because he loved his God. I fight because I love. I want this country to be the country that my son gets to grow up in. A country of freedom, a country of grace, a country of hope. a country that loves God. I want to lead this country in a better spot. I fight for my family. I fight for those around me. I fight for my wife and my son. I fight for my church to see it grow and expand. I fight for what I love. Friends, do not give up the good fight. Keep fighting in this faith. God bless your church.